Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear us properly and you didn't have any problems connecting to the webinar. Um, Welcome to this training on backup and disaster recovery planning. So before I begin, I'll just mention some housekeeping. You can put your questions on the chat. Do not be, scared of putting any of your questions there. Feel free, and no questions is too, you can put any questions you want. We will answer them the best that we can, and also at the end of the sessions, any questions that we've left out, we will try to answer them. If we cannot answer the questions, what we will do, we will note down the question, and we're going to send everyone the answer by email. So having said that, now we already 3 minutes into our webinar. We're going to begin. Next slide, John. So what we're going to cover here is we're going to cover, like you see on the agenda, what is the cloud-based backup, some key concept on backup and disaster recovery and business continuity, why RPO and RTO matters and what it is really, and some backup solutions offered by OVHcloud, and what also you as a partner can benefit by proposing these to your customers. All right. And finally, we'll talk a bit about some IT DR strategies. Now, what is cloud-based backup? And why companies are using cloud-based backup more and more? Now the simple reason is basically it enables companies to lower their data protection cost. Like you see here highlighted, the word cost is highlighted in red. It's because many companies, that's the first thing we're going to ask you if you're going to put forward their, any proposal on backup solution. How much is it going to cost me? Now, many companies do not really value their data as much, but it is going to cost me a lot if I lose my data. This is because it becomes an expense for them. So basically, if you propose them the right solution on the cloud, this lower their data protection costs and basically expand their capabilities without raising costs or administrative overheads. Basically, they don't need to hire, people to install the infrastructure there. They don't need to hire backup solution experts, So that's one of the things that really matters to these companies. And when you talk about cloud-based backup, it's not only the big major companies that can benefit, like companies of all sizes can benefit by, eliminating the on-premises hardware and software infrastructure for data protection. That doesn't mean you don't need the licenses on the cloud. You need cloud licenses, but when you talk about, you need the space, you need the electricity, you need, the hardware and the human resource to do all that. It just adds a lot. So basically, when you do the cloud-based backup, you're simplifying their backup administration costs, and it really provide a value-added proposition to these partners. So lowering total TCO, protect more data, hands-off backup, automated offsite backup on the cloud. These are value proposition that when you talk to your customers can really make them take the decision to go on a backup solution with you. And now why are we talking about backup here is because this market is going to explode, and it's already exploding. It's not that we are there was not a backup before, but now because of explosion of data, the more we have data, the more the need you need to store these data, and the more you need to back up these data. And the backup, you need many things because of backup, because sometimes you need compliance. Some banks require that you keep data for 10 years, 5 years. Some law firms require that you keep the data for 7 years. So depending on the countries that you are, there are different compliance mechanisms that you need to keep your data. It could be archive data, but at the end of it, you need to back up this data somewhere. So what we were saying is that the growth in terms of money, it will come from, so the analysis is that the market will be, there'll be a growth of around 10 billion in backup solution. And the interesting point here, if you see on the slide here, is that 37% of the growth will originate from North America. Now, what does this really mean? Well, it means a lot for you, because if 37 growth is from the North American market, meaning that your customers, they are looking at buying a data protection solution somewhere. So if it's not with you as a partner, they are buying from somewhere else. Now, doesn't mean that if you as a partner don't have the expertise, you can't propose them. You can work with other specialized partners to provide these to your customers and make additional profit on that. At the end of the day, so you are providing a value add service to your customers by consulting with them and telling them, okay, you need to back up your solution now, you back up your data now, and also you start gaining expertise if you partner with other specialized partners to provide this backup. Now, if you have already developed this niche, how you can back up, and the expertise how to back up based on the different vendors, be it Veeam, be it Veritas, be it Zerto, etc., then it's good. But then you need continuous training as well. The other question is, are you really tapping in this market right now? And the drivers, of course, is the explosion of data, and also there's the shift, from CapEx to OpEx model. Because if all your customers is moving their applications and data to the cloud, why will they start to back up on premise? It doesn't make sense, because they want something, everything in the cloud, but then here we're going to discuss as well, you need to carefully plan this strategy, plan how you're going to make backup in the cloud. And one thing I also want to mention before I pass over to Johnny is there's a key difference between backup and recovery and disaster recovery. If you look on the web, it's like basically backup and recovery, you're automating, file storage, enable data recovery and restoration following a loss. So this is backup and recovery. Whereas disaster recovery refers to restoring not only your lost data, but also the infrastructure component configurations, the processors, the application data, database contents, and back to a specific time or functionality. And that's where the RPO and RTO comes in. So we're going to look at all these in this webinar, and I'm going to pass over to John to go to deep dive into this.
Thank you very much, Roshan. Appreciate it. And it's a great intro because we have a lot to cover, and there are a lot of different terms that we're going to cover. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time, actually, not long, just going into a bit of definitions about what we at OVH call certain topics with regarding to data backup and replication and virtualization. So for those of you who've been on our previous sessions, I'm just going to kind of spend a little bit of time framing the discussion with regards to what we at OVHcloud are offering for you, our partners, the market kind of as was brought up by Roshan, and then I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of how our company, our solutions can help you sell more business and help your customers, obviously, through disaster recovery and backup, but also kind of the different types of situations that you might run into or you might get questions asked by customers of you so that you can come to them better prepared and better armed with the right information. So when we talk about raw data backup, just data backup, it's really about making copies of discrete files and saving them somewhere else. So you might save them on a hard drive outside of a machine, you might save them in another location, you might save them in the cloud, but this is what we talk about when we file system backup. And the idea here is that in different, you want to do this in different folders, and you might do selective copies, you might want to do things in incremental or complete backups of a file system. So I might save 20 different versions of a particular legal document, or I might just save a complete one of a final version. That's just one example of it. It could be a record from a database with a transaction. It could be just about anything, but that's the type of file we're talking about. And any kind of platform will do, whether it's a dedicated server or any instances or virtual machines, but it's essentially using the operating system to make these copies. The next term, we talk about virtualization backup, and specifically we're talking about virtual machines. So when we talk about backup, it's how does the virtual machine and its information, so the state of the machine and the data on the machine. So if you hear us talk about virtualization backup, it's that. And it's key for operational efficiencies. If I do have a company, for example, or a customer that wants to do backup of VMs, the reason why is not only data and knowing what the state is, but it's really, really important also for making sure that you can spin up different copies with backups for different machines. So if you want to look at things historically, or if you need to expand it, having a backup actually helps you go forward when you're working with virtual machines to set these things up. And it works, you can use a virtual machine snapshot, which takes it, what's happening at that particular time, all the different information about the state, whether it's suspended in its configuration. And then you can do it with dedicated servers. If there's a hypervisor layer in the public cloud, you create snapshots or instances of volumes. And then the hosted private cloud, if you have our hosted private cloud or managed bare essentials, you can use the VMware software that comes with it. The last one is data replication. Replication, from our point of view, is having a copy of production data in very low RPO. And I'll get into what the RPO stands for if you don't know. And if you do, I'll just go into it again. But it means I have almost a synchronized copy of a data somewhere else, so that the data, if it needs to come back quickly, it can. For example, if I'm a medical profession and I need to have up-to-date data, or it could be banking, or it could be any of these things, I need to have a copy of production data. That's a key differentiator. It takes a lot of effort to do this, but it's important to understand that data replication is a key demand for a lot of different industries of different areas. And pretty much any type of platform will do it when you want to replicate this. It depends more on your strategy, whether you want it on-premise, in the cloud, where you want it between clouds, between cloud and on-premise, but we'll get into that strategy a little bit later. So that's really what we're going to go for on these definitions. And then I want to make sure that when we talk about risk mitigation, why am I doing a backup? The backup really is about the most important features about data recoverability. How quickly can it be done? How can I get my data back? And I need that data. For example, let's say I'm a company that has a big CRM department or group, and I have people calling into a call center and something goes down. I need to be able to recover that information about particular customers or deals very, very quickly. And sometimes, in fact, and frequently in CRM systems in call centers, it's key to be able to pull up that data. And you'll often hear someone saying, well, I'm just waiting for me to pull that up. When there's a downtime with regards to risk mitigation, you get customers who are not happy spending time on the phone. So the speed of recoverability is important for a backup. But beside that, I want to differentiate disaster recovery plans. It's the process. It's not the actual copying. It's the process that you will need as a company, or that you will help a company establish. So when things go down, when there is a problem, they will have a plan on how to go from that point of disaster to being back and working functionally and generating business again. The important thing to know with a disaster recovery plan is customers are responsible to how to architect their solutions so they can match their desired recovery time objective and recovery point objective. This is where you as partners and your expertise with your customers' knowledge comes in together. And customers are responsible for data resiliency, consistency, and availability. You and we are there to help them, but customers need to be able to do this themselves, because we can't tell them how to run their business. We give them the tools, and you give them your expertise on how to set this up. And there's never one solution. There are always different solutions because everyone has a different setup. So it takes a lot of creativity when dealing with a disaster recovery plan and understanding what are the different technologies and offerings that you can give to a customer.
John, I just want to chip in here. Can you just go back previous slide?
Sure.
Yeah. So I want just to mention two things that are really important here. One is, when we're talking about backup, it is not the same thing as replication. Now, even before, some people are confused about, oh, when we're talking about backup, they mix it with replication. These are two different distinct things, and some customers can get really confused saying that, oh, I'm replicating to my offsite, I've got a hot backup. They just mix things. If you're replicating your data, it's not the same thing as backup. Because if, let's say, you're replicating your database to another site, and your database gets corrupted, could be any database, can open source database, could be an Oracle database, could be an SQL database, and that database gets corrupted. Basically, if you're replicating, taking snapshots and sending it to your DR site, that data will be corrupted by your DR site as well. So basically, if you have not then done a backup, of the uncorrupted data prior to the data getting corrupted, you will end up at both sides having corrupted data. Basically, you've lost your data because the data is corrupted and you can't retrieve it, you can't recompile it and reaccess that data. So we need to be really careful that, yes, one thing is you do have your backup, and then you can replicate, your data to an offsite as a DR, but that's two different things. So if your customers tomorrow tells you, oh, I'm doing a replication, so I don't need backup, you need to clear things up with them. I've seen this. I've talked to customers many times, and many customers, like, they think that they have that. And the second thing is about disaster recovery, what John is saying, and this is the disaster planning. It is a consultancy that you can build your customer. I've done many consultancy on disaster recovery. It can be 1 week, can be 2 weeks, can be 3 weeks, depending on the size of the organization. But this is a billable consultancy fees that you can bill your customers. Of course, before you bill them, you need to have the expertise to be able to implement the disaster recovery plan for them, because the end result will be a document, a dynamic document that you're going to hand over to them, and which we explain in the later sections of this webinar, but this is the document that you're going to hand over to them. I just wanted to clarify this.
That's a really good point. Yes, that this disaster recovery plan is a plan. It must be documented, and it must be looked at by the people responsible for running the organization and the executives. That's a very good point. Thank you for covering that, Roshan. It's not just, yeah, we have a plan. It's something that's really thought through in different areas, from the IT side, which is only one component of it, to human resources, to everything. So thank you for explaining that point and the differentiation between replication and backup. It's often confused. Thank you. So going forward, we talked about recovery point objective and a recovery time objective. And I was trying to find the best way of doing this, and I found just a great definition from Zerto. And Zerto's point basically said was, recovery point objective is how much data can I afford to lose? So how much can I live with? In other words, if I'm running a business and I said, oh man, I lost a day's worth of data, is that going to bother me? Is that going to affect things? Or I can afford to lose 10 minutes worth of data, or I can afford to lose no data, 0 time. That's really your recovery point objective, is how much can I live with that will not affect my day-to-day operations or cause any problems in an audit, or potentially for healthcare, something life-saving, or whatever the case may be. Your recovery time objective is how fast, what is the amount of time, minutes, days, weeks, to get from where I was to recover my data and applications and have them back online and running in whatever your recovery site is. It could be on your site or elsewhere, but it means that I'm running again. It doesn't just mean, okay, it's back up. It means that I can actually do business transactions or whatever type of transaction, any type of electronic transactions again. So the RTO is how fast can I get back to business? The RPO is how much time am I willing, or data can I afford to lose without it affecting my business? And if you look at the bottom left with the examples, it could be like a small company. Well, if I lose a day's worth, whatever, okay, I'll live. No one's, crying for my things now. I can just, look at a backup. I can see what I have to do. An e-commerce organization might need 24/7, right? Let's say you're a global company, and I need a very low RPO and a very low RTO, because let's say I have data centers across the globe, or I only have 1 or 2, but I need to have that data being pushed around as quickly as possible so that business doesn't stop. And the last one, a health authority, is a very common example where, as more and more healthcare moves into IT space, the mandates for governments to have companies that are handling IT structures, particularly if they're doing live monitoring or these types of things, is they need it within seconds, because they're monitoring critical situations as it happens. So I can't afford an hour's worth of downtime or 2 hours worth of downtime. And depending on the industry, it really makes a difference. So the RPO and RTO are going to differ from company to company, but from industry to industry, especially where there's regulation. And you know that expression, time is money? It is, because particularly for e-commerce, think about not being able to perform transactions when you want to do this. And I can give you a personal example where I was trying to do a transaction on a website for an insurance deal, for an automobile insurance, and their system was down. And their system was down for 24 hours, which is unbelievable in this day and age. But I couldn't complete that transaction. And you know what I did? I went to their competitor. So it seems like a small example, but being able to get back up and running as soon as possible really does mean money for companies. How do they, complete transactions? How do they book those transactions, or what time? So it sounds trite, time is money, but it really does happen where people can't afford to wait, and they need to complete a purchase because it's time critical. So think about those kind of things when you're discussing with your customers. What industry are they in? How much time can they afford to lose, or data can they afford to lose, and how fast they need to be up and running. So let's go into a little bit about the concepts of backup and disaster recovery planning, and we'll give you kind of some practical advice. You'll hear the term business continuity planning. Business continuity is, how does my business keep running? And COVID is the best example we have. Most recently is people got sent home. How do operations stay running at the global level? Well, within that, in terms of the global level, oops, sorry about that. Within that, you have basically a lot of different areas that you need to think about. You need to have a plan, and companies need to have these plans in terms of business continuity life cycles. And within that, disaster recovery planning and backups fall into business continuity planning. And big companies and mid-sized companies are taking this very, very seriously, because either they're going to be forced through regulation, or if it's a company that's public, they're going to have to present a business continuity plan to their shareholders that they actually have one and that's being validated. Depending on the type of industry they're in, if they're in an industry that might have hazardous materials, for example, let's say oil and gas or mining, what are the types of plans that have to keep things running and keep things safe? From a technology perspective, what we deal with OVHcloud, and you deal with your company, is more along the lines of data protection. What's going to happen if, heaven forbid, there's a cybersecurity incident or there's ransomware? How do I get back to work? How do I mitigate against an actual disaster? There could be a terrible water leak. There could be a fire. It happens in buildings. We know this happens. And I have to be perfectly honest. We at OVHcloud experienced this in our France operations, where we had an actual disaster. And how do we respond to those incidents? And those incidents involve communication, but they really involve on the IT side, since we can't really live without software anymore. And the infrastructure is, where in this whole process of business continuity do you help your customers with the IT side of it? And it's not simple, because the threats that happen with IT have a huge impact. So going further on business continuity, IT, think about software, think about hardware. If a human actually commits an error with a physical device, then it can get knocked over, water spills on things. We've seen these kind of things. There are catastrophes. Data center interruption, there's a power interruption, cables do break. Sometimes there's a bigger problem at hand. And then we live in an area in Canada where, believe it or not, here in Montreal, we had an earthquake recently. It didn't do much, but still, it's something to think about. But the consequences for business in business continuity planning, and this is where you can actually help, is there's a legal component to it that some companies have to say, look, what is the business continuity and what is the disaster recovery plan, and how have I set up my backups to enable it? But there's also brand damage. If you're offline, people say, oh, you become unreliable. Helping a company be resilient in its IT operations with disaster recovery planning and backup, you're helping them to ensure that their brand does not survive damage, that the functions keep working. And we know that with brand, it can be destroyed. And believe it or not, this is a small component that not a lot of people see, but immediately people say, oh, their site's not working or something's down. People get angry. So think about when you're helping out in terms of business continuity and disaster recovery planning and backup proposals, that you're actually helping their company's brand stay stable. And of course, there's always financial issues, like I spoke about. Time is money. That's another real business consequence. If I can't do stuff, I can't execute my business transactions. Yes.
I'll just chip in here, John. One thing that we are hearing, like nearly every day, is company being hit by ransomware. Basically like freezing their entire IT system, and with that, of course, the accessibility to their data.
Exactly.
So many times, what happens is because these customers are doing their backup on the same, subnet, on the same LAN and on-premise. So basically, when they get attacked by the ransomware, their backup as well gets encrypted. So then the backup is not of any use, even if they are doing backup. Or worse, some are not even doing backup or not doing the backup properly. So there again, like John mentioned, the importance of first doing a backup, a proper backup, and do it not on the same site, but having, you will see afterwards the 3-2-1. And most, what is recommended is that you do not do it on the same premise. You do it on an alternative premise, or you do it on the cloud. And while you do it in the cloud, it's not on the same network. Basically, if your data gets encrypted by ransomware on premise, that data in the cloud is not encrypted. So basically, you don't need to pay that ransomware then, because your data has been safely backed up safely in the cloud. So this is one really important lesson and advice you can give to your customers. While you put up the policies of a backup strategy in place, you need to be careful. Even if you put it in the cloud, it doesn't get hit in the cloud by the ransomware.
It's an excellent point. It's a really, really excellent point. And again, it's the value of a backup and being able to plan for this. And we saw, and we're going to keep on seeing the number of ransomware attacks going up. And ransomware, the people who are committing these gangs, they don't care if it's healthcare, if it's energy, if it's banking, if it's anything. They're not choosy. They're just looking for money. So you are actually, as a partner, helping with us to ensure that businesses stay solvent and keep on going. So you have a really important role to play. With regards to disaster recovery, the most important thing on this slide I want you to take away is the last 2 points, which is technology is the final aspect, that it's a matter of the organization and whose responsibility it is. So whatever company you're working with needs to understand. And the last point, which is really, really important, which is having an RTO and an RPO at 0 is expensive, because that means I have to have information being replicated all the time, being available all the time. I'm going to have to use multiple sites, physical sites, locations where things get backed up. It could be a question of on-premise and cloud. It could be 2 different data centers, whatever the case is. But for the higher the security, the more you pay. And think of it really as an insurance policy. When you get an insurance policy on your home, you can choose from different levels. You might have the one that no matter what happens, you're absolutely going to get paid. And you might say, no, I'm only taking a minor one in case there's fire damage, and you don't take flood damage. Or for your car, or for any type of thing. Think of disaster recovery and backups as your insurance plan for your company. And we all need insurance because bad things happen. They just do. We can't rely on things going peachy all the time. But there is a cost, and it's important to know that yes, an RPO of 0 is difficult and it is expensive, but it is necessary in some cases for critical infrastructure, or for example, for certain industries as well, healthcare being one of them. So it's a very honest discussion you're going to have with your customers when you're talking about this, that there is a cost associated with it, but the better your RTO and RPO, or the more reduced it is, there will be a cost because you have to keep things running all the time. It's not bad. It's a reality that they need to know, and you want to be upfront with your customers with regards to this. And you're going to here's just a couple of examples. These are some of the things that we offer, and this is just different ideas of how you can do these things. These are not absolute solutions, and I'm going to go into greater detail of RTO examples. But if I need a recovery time of 0 to 1 hours, it means I need data synchronization and replication. That goes back to exactly what Roshan said a couple of slides ago. It's not backup, it is replication. So make that point clear when you're talking to your customers. If I need to have it quickly, it's about data synchronization and replication. If I'm going for 1 to 24 hours, so up to a day, there's a mix of replication and backup for faster recovery, but I can't afford to be down that time. If it's longer, say 24 to 72 hours, I have much more flexibility in that respect. So I might have a managed backup. I might have something in archives that I can pull out. They'll probably not necessarily so much in archives, but I'll have it in storage. I can have it in storage on the cloud, on a private cloud, on premise. It could be on one of my servers that's either located physically, or it could be one of our servers, our bare metal servers. There are different options for recovery time examples. And this gives you an idea of what you would propose to a customer in terms of what they're thinking of. And with our solutions, we'll get more into the solutions in a minute, you're kind of thinking about what they might not need it for every aspect too. So you might have a company or a customer, I won't say a company, but a customer that says, do I need everything to be done in the next hour? Let's say I can get to my personnel data in 3 days, I don't care. Okay, so you're going to start to come up with strategies about what's the most critical application and what's the most critical data and what solution it sits on for you to actually offer a backup and a DRP solution. Here, what I want to talk about a little bit is the things that you will take into account or your customers need to take into account when you're discussing the RPO and RTO with them. You have discussions about, do I want an incremental backup? Do I need a copy of all the files that have changed since the last full backup? Do I just need some to be changed? Is there a differential backup process? Am I only just updating a little bit, or do I need the whole thing to be done? Do I need all the files saved that day? Which data is the most important? Where is it located? Is it local? Is it remote? Is it the cloud? What are the backup schedules that you want to have? Does it run every day? Does it run every hour? And these are choices for you to make based on what a customer is going to ask of you. And also, what is the backup management and the type of storage? And don't forget, you need to plan and test for this. So it's not just, okay, here you go, I gave you a disaster recovery plan. It needs to be vetted and tested to make sure that it does work the way it does. And that's another aspect that some companies often don't consider, is that just because you have a plan and you have a backup plan and you have a disaster recovery plan, it needs to be tested and vetted to make sure that it's stable and it works. Because there have been instances in the past with lots of companies where they said, we have the plan, but they never tested it out to see, does it actually work and could they retrieve the data? And then they spent much longer getting back up to recovery time than they'd wanted. So it does involve testing. So Roshan brought up this whole point about the 3-2-1 or 3-2-1 rule. And you can see the little lovely animation going on the screen. This is from their Veeam blog, and it's a best practice. It's not just Veeam that does this, but it's a best practice from a company that's dedicated to backup. And it's how to have zero errors in verifying your recoverability. And essentially, you need 3 different data copies. How you want to do those data copies are your choice. It could be a virtual machine, it could be a backup. You have different ways to copy the data. It's your choice. But we want to put them on different media. So it could be a tape media, it could be something stored on a hard drive, but try and keep them in different media so that you actually have a physical backup somewhere. And then one of those should be off-site. It should be in a physically different location, at least at the bare minimum. It should be in and we of course recommend the cloud, because the cloud has more redundancies. The cloud could be a customer's cloud, it could be OVHcloud. And one last one is if you can have a copy that's offline. So in other words, it's physically taken, it's in a different place, so you have an air gap. Now for a lot of smaller companies, that seems like a lot to do. It's not as bad as you think. It just requires planning and having the right people and the right plan to do it. I worked with an IT director at a previous company I was at, and he would follow these 3-2-1-1 rules or 3-2-1 rules. And the reason what he would do is he would physically take some of the copies out and he would deliver them to another place outside of a different building. And that was part of his job as an IT admin. Granted, it was a smaller company, but there were people just trying to follow this because the data meant the data was their money. Without data, they had no money. They couldn't do anything. So, saying, oh, wow, this is hard to do, it's not. It's really about having the multiple copies, putting them into different media, having them one at least stored offsite or in the cloud if you can, and then finding one where it's offsite, it's offline, it's air gapped. A lot of companies might think, it's overkill. It's not overkill. It's really the best practice to have on this so that you don't have these errors. And that's the insurance policy. This is your insurance policy that we talked about that you're offering your customers so they can actually continue doing business or continue working or continue functioning. So it can always, go ahead, please.
John, just one point, sorry to interrupt you. Just one point here I just want to emphasize as well is whenever, if you're following the 3-2-1 rule, one thing that many customers do not do, and there's a good reason they don't do it, is they don't test the backup regularly. If you ask some customers, they will do the testing of a backup like once a month, or sometimes once a year, which is really not recommended. And the best practices, of course, is to test it as regularly. Like you say, okay, let's test it every day. Sometimes you can put a policy in place, in software whereby you can do the restoration. But then the real problem that arises, and which I mentioned earlier, is where do you get the space to test and connect you, for example, to your database when you do the restoration? And that's the real issue that most customers get, because if you have a database, let's say you have some storage space of 1 terabyte, and if you want to restore that whole database, that whole data set of 1 terabyte, you need to have like both one additional storage that is dedicated so that you can do the restoration and test your backup. And that's the real issue that many customers get. You do so. And they say, why should I invest in another storage device just to do the testing of a backup? And of course, that's where cloud-based backup makes sense, because then you can just buy some storage for a number of days, do your testing, recover, and test it, and then you just and then it's gone the storage. You don't need to keep that storage. That's a really, really important issue whenever you're proposing a cloud-based storage to your cloud-based backup solutions to your customers, is that flexibility and agility that cloud-based storage gives them, especially for the restoration and testing their backup. I just wanted to highlight this point.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's and that restoration goes into the recovery time objective. Remember, it's going to take you time to restore that data. That's part of that RTO. Just because I've got the data back now, I've got to restore it and put it in a fashion where people can start using it again. So part of that recovery time objective is the restoration as well. It's a great point. Thank you, Roshan. So let me just go forward here. We work closely with Veeam. That's why you saw the Veeam one. Veeam is one of our partners. We've worked with them for quite a long time. There's a reason why we've chosen them, because they are a leading backup solution provider and because they work in the cloud with us. They have many different options that they have, from VMware to all-in-one availability suites. You can do snapshots. You can do pretty much any type of thing that you need, whether it's from a source host and goes through a Veeam server to an OVH repository through the VLAN. You have a lot of different options, but there's you get probably one of the best offerings here with Veeam that's known across the globe actually as being one of the standard bearers. It's important for us because we work tightly with them, and it's part of our hosted cloud offering. And there are other aspects where you can use it with our dedicated servers, but it's there because it's one of the better ones to work with. And where we have a managed protection, we offer a managed solution in some cases. We'll manage the backup for them, and that's not always the case, but it's one of the options that we offer. So backup as a service is, with Veeam, it becomes a solution that you can offer to your customers. So if they're looking at OVHcloud for their infrastructure, one of the things that you can work with them is giving them or selling the value of the Veeam automated backup or managed backup. and having the backup is really, really important so that they can spin up new instances, or if there's a physical defect with the machine, it's really a good built-in solution. It's just important to know that we manage this on the hosted private cloud. We don't manage it on our other solutions, not for dedicated server currently. What's great about the Veeam, we offer what's called the Veeam Cloud Connect. So you can get your physical and virtual backups off-site and hosted with us. So if a customer has it on-site and they do install Veeam, they can use it with us to have that off-site. And that goes back to the previous slide about having one in the cloud and having a cloud backup solution. The Veeam Enterprise solution, there's an important, you'll see it says not currently available in Canada. We will be offering that down the road. What we do offer in other areas is we sell Veeam licenses. So you can basically use the Veeam backup, but the customers are responsible for then implementing the solution with you. So it actually becomes an opportunity for you as partners to have the Veeam license that we sell, but then to actually set this up for them. So that's where you actually get a value add on your part. And it really, really helps for these bigger institutions and bigger companies, so you can configure your backups and then have it largely automated. But again, the enterprise level is not yet available in Canada. We're working on that. And it's important to know as well that the managed service, the managed backup is compatible with our hosted private cloud. You can get a service on our managed bare metal as well in the dedicated cloud. Now I want to get into the disaster recovery aspect of it. We also have as a partner Zerto, and Zerto is a globally recognized brand as well. We are up to Zerto version 10. Version 11 has come out, and we are testing for in the coming months to be compatible with Zerto 11. So if you're asking which version are we compatible with, currently it's version 10 of Zerto. And in the coming months, we'll be compatible with version 11. I don't have a date for you yet. But what is Zerto? It's your disaster recovery for your to control your DRP. It's your IT DRP strategy is what it is. OVHcloud manages this platform, and Zerto is available through our solution, through hosted private cloud. And it's a key aspect for companies that want to do hosted private cloud or private cloud to private cloud backup, or not backup, excuse me, disaster recovery. There are a number of companies that have their own data and they need a private cloud in the sense that it could be on premise, but for us, it's also available with our hosted private cloud. And they'll have that as a way to replicate data in case of a disaster, obviously. It can be done as well as a primary site. So you can have an on-prem cloud service provider or another service provider that does work with Zerto, and you can have the disaster recovery plan with us on our hosted private cloud as another option. So it is important to know that you can do it from one of our private clouds to another one, and they can be in physically different locations. And you can also do it from an on-premise, or you can do it with another cloud service provider, one of our competitors, obviously. And via Zerto, you can have that DRP strategy working with us using the Zerto platform. There are 2 points at the very, very bottom which are important to point out. Is it's compatible with our hosted private cloud and our bare metal essentials in a dedicated cloud. The software allows customers, I'm specifically saying customers, to manage their data replication. Again, this is not something that we say, here you go. We work with you to say, here's the software and the platform. You as partners will work with customers to say, this is how you want to manage it for your disaster recovery planning strategy. So it's important to know that we're providing the tools, but you're providing the expertise and the vision into it. So they have a choice between a backup solution with Veeam and a disaster recovery solution with OVHcloud Zerto. We don't own it, but we're partnering with Zerto. And Rashawn made a great point before that there's a difference between a backup plan and disaster recovery plan. This is the software to help you with a disaster recovery plan, and a backup is a component of that. It's not the only thing. So what do we want to do with you as partners? We want to see you, leveraging in this partner program, being able to use our infrastructure and offer these solutions and other solutions as well, so that as partners, you help our customers build redundant solutions. You help them build resilient solutions. We take care of our own network, but our customers and your customers need to understand that they share responsibility in this too, and that you have the option to give them the consulting services and the disaster recovery planning services and backup services that are important. So the reason why you're in this call, we hope, is that you're seeing that there's a value when you have our solution or selling our solution, that you also as well can offer expertise that we don't have, and you'll be part of this partner network, this partner space, to be able to take advantage of it.
I just want to add on here, John, is remember, like I mentioned earlier, and John mentioned that if you don't have the expertise to provide, like to do your own, like for example, for your own set of data or for your customers, we do have other partners in our ecosystem that can really help you on that. And of course, it's up to you, of course, to sign the NDAs and the memorandum of understanding or the contracts with them. But rest assured that our ecosystem can help you. For example, I've got here, I can see one of our partners, Trilio, is already in here, and they are based, in the North American market, providing data protection for Kubernetes and virtualization. It's not that we are really, from our side, we are really agnostic. It's not, we don't really push any other vendors, but what we want is for our partners to leverage the best technology out there to provide them to their customers and really be customer centric. So if you do have any opportunities and you feel that you don't have expertise to implement it, do not hesitate to get back to us, to our salespeople, connect with them. We will provide you we'll connect you with the right partners to do it.
Thank you. So the next slide is really about some of the IT disaster DRP strategies that you can implement. These are examples. They're not absolute definite ones, but here are some of the things that we've done with our customers that have been useful depending on the way they classify the criticality of their data, of their operations. The first one on the left is, I need an RPO and an RTO that's equal or close to 0. That means companies can't work without their applications. So if I'm a bank, if I'm an insurance company, if I provide widgets, I'm a company that produces things, I can't live without these applications because business grinds to a halt, and that's bad. So that is something where I want close to 0, and I'm going to need potentially synchronization in 2 active data centers and a backup data center. It's complicated, but these are for companies that can't afford to go down. They're running production around the clock, whether production is electronic or of physical goods. They just can't go down. In many cases, they're going to want data centers that are separated geographically and data synchronized between these 2 areas, and having a third backup. It's really about not being able to go down. And it is more costly, obviously, but it means the business keeps going on, because the loss of business would be even greater. For essential applications, if you look at the middle one, essential application means I can spend some time with this not working. So let's say, for example, I have a billing system. I can wait a few hours, so maybe I can put in some billing afterwards. It's not going to mean the end of my company or the end of my organization. It could be, let's say, an ordering system would be one example. So they can work with an application, but certainly not for more than a day. It's usually less than a day. And if you look at the top, it says the RPO is 1 hour, less than 1 hour, and the RTO is 4 hours. 4 hours is half of a workday. And in reality, if you're working in one area, one continent, you're one local, half your workday is a lot. And if you're spread over multiple time zones, you're going to be affecting people who are, before or after. So an essential application means, okay, I can still do business, but I really can't wait for long. And I really want to have one active data center. I want to have one passive data center where, as you can see in the arrow, it's going back. It receives the replication, and a backup one. Compare that to the first one where it's 0, 0. You notice the synchronization goes back and forth in between the active data centers. In the essential application one with a longer RPO and RTO, it's replication one way from the active data center to the passive one. And you need a backup data center. So that's kind of how you're focusing on. You have one core one that you're focusing on. For non-critical applications, in other words, I could wait a day, probably a little bit more than a day. it might be something where, yeah, I'm storing stuff in data. It could be human resource data. It could be a number of different things, but you know that if I didn't have it for a day, I might not go back to it. That's okay. You want to have your active data center and you want to have your backup data center. And from the backup, you'll restore this information, you'll bring it in, it'll take you a day. You're still going to have to call things up and restore it, and it will take you time. But it's really, I don't need that information immediately. And depending on what industry you're in and what the regulation is, if it's something more highly regulated or less highly regulated, it depends, and you should take that into account. But these are examples that you can give to your customers of what's your most critical, and ask these questions. What's your most critical application? If you need to be back to zero, close to zero, how are we going to do this? And can I work with it for a bit or not? Can I live like half a day? And the last one is, I can go a day or two without it. It's not going to be the end of my world. But that's important for your customers to say, I need to know my business well enough to say, what do I need? And that's part of a DRP strategy. That's when you're going to go and get expertise, and you're going to get your customer to start giving you information. So I'm going to get into what we offer in terms of backup and DRP and some of our storage offerings. So again, storage is, I need kind of the information soon. It's not the same as a backup and a DRP. Storage is sometimes mistaken for a backup. It isn't. You can have a backup with storage, but it's not the same thing. Storage is, I'm placing it there. Backup, there's a plan around it, and there's automation around it generally. What am I going to do? For our backup and DRP, we offer Veeam, and I told you about the enterprise one that's not yet available in Canada, but we also have the Veeam managed one, which is suitable for backup. Veeam Enterprise really is suitable for a DRP, and it's offered in our bare metal cloud and our hosted private cloud. The managed one is really for our hosted private cloud only. With regards to Zerto, Zerto is a disaster recovery plan. That's it. And it only works with our hosted private cloud. And disaster recovery is all about that planning. It's not about setting backups. Backup options, we have a fair number of. There are backup storage that you can buy from us. We have instant backups. You can do volume snapshots and VPS backups that are available for a number of our products, mostly in the public cloud and our virtual private server, but also for our bare metal cloud. And lastly, if you have internal backups, we offer a cloud archive, and that's really for our web cloud and our mail, and that's less for North America. We don't sell as much, I'll be honest with you, but it's more the first three. So we have backup and DRP solutions for specific aspects of the market and for specific verticals as well. You'll see the storage on the right. Essentially, we offer all different types of storage. The storage really is where I need to call up data on a more regular basis. Please, whenever you are talking with a customer, make sure that they don't confuse storage for backup. Storage is what I have in my cupboard, right? I have, food in my cupboards. I have stuff in my fridge. That's my storage, but it can go bad. So it doesn't help me back up anything. It doesn't mean I have extra, versions of what I have. So know that our customers and you can offer these storage products, but it's really the difference is about leveraging that to have a backup and a DRP. With Veeam and Zerto specifically, these are the integrated solutions that go with our storage products. It's important to know that these are different licensed, and you can use these for your disaster recovery planning. With storage, for example, I want to give you one use case, which is via S3, the API interface. You can take storage that's in Amazon, and you can move it to our data centers as a possible with for a DRP. So you can use that, for example, if I have a ton of critical data that I've stored and it's partially with Amazon in their S3, our API will allow you to move that and have another copy of it or to defray it to our own data centers. But that works with Zerto only. I'm going to call up one thing again. I know I've said this before. Veeam Managed for hosted private cloud and Veeam Cloud Connect are temporarily unavailable at the moment. We are increasing our physical building so we can actually add more storage. It's actually, there's demand for it, and we're building out our infrastructure to be able to put in more servers. So it's not anything but that really, like, we need more space because we're growing so well. But the Veeam Enterprise, again, is not yet available in Canada, and as soon as it is, we'll let you know. So the next 4 slides are examples of how you can use a DRP strategy with our hosted private cloud for a few different things. And the reason why I'm saying our hosted private cloud is the types of enterprises or companies that want to use this want the security of our hosted private cloud together with the ability to do backups. They know that this is critical operations for them. The case where you might be thinking of is what happens if case there's a loss of a virtual machine or loss of a host in a hosted private cloud, loss of a data store in a hosted private cloud, or the loss of the entire data center. That does happen. We unfortunately experienced that at OVHcloud. So for each of these, and you'll receive these slides afterwards with a lot more information in them, we give you a suggested example of an IT DRP strategy and what are the products that go with it. So these are not set in stone. They're merely examples that you can talk about with a customer so that if you have a customer that's got hosted private cloud, then they can really say, okay, I need something to deal with a data center. If I'm thinking about virtual machines, what is their need? So it's important to tease that out with customers, but this is something that you can use as a discussion, a point of discussion for someone who's on hosted private cloud. For example, let's say you have a public cloud customer and they're looking at a DRP strategy and they have stateless applications. Stateless being data stored in object storage, container or a bucket for external storage. Well, what if, again, there's a loss of a virtual machine? What do you do? What if there's a loss of a host or of an OpenStack region? Because as you know, our public cloud is based on OpenStack, and the loss of an entire data center. So here are the strategies again that you can use and present to a customer if in our public cloud offering, and they need a disaster recovery plan for a backup. And as we've seen, companies often think that just because something is in the cloud that it is backed up. No, that's a mistake. Companies must have a disaster recovery plan and a backup plan, even if they're in a public cloud, because bad things can happen to those data centers. So please let your customers know that they have really to be careful and not think just because something's in a public cloud or with Amazon that it can't go down. People lose data, it happens. There are physical problems that happen, and it's important to consider. If you're looking for a stateful public cloud, a stateful application, remember the data stored in local hard drives on virtual machines or in remote block storage. So if that's the case and your customer has stateful applications that they're bringing to market or that they have on the market, what do you do in terms of DRP strategy? Again, for the same scenarios of what I'm trying to prevent if I have a loss of a virtual machine, a host, or an OpenStack region, or an entire data center in the public cloud. Here are the products that are available, be it an instance backup or be data replication, whatever the case is, object storage, what type of storage am I going to use? And then what is the strategy that you can present to those customers so that they are as safe and resilient as possible? The last one is just for a standalone application. If I have a standalone application for bare metal, and as you know, many of our customers do have bare metal because they like that control. If I have a loss of a disk or a group of disks, or the server goes down or the entire data center goes down, what are the types of products that we offer them? And this is one where I just want to bring up the RAID card that we have. We'll be expanding some of our RAID options for our dedicated servers in the coming months. You're going to have backup storage. You can have backup servers, for example. We sell backup servers. You can have hardware attached NAS in the same data center location or different ones. It depends really on what is the critical data and how to use it. We know that a number of our customers use bare metal for mission critical applications. So if it's a mission critical application, really you're going to want to think about what's the way I can have data off-site in a backup, because if it's mission critical, I need to be able to get it up and running quickly, and I can't afford the downtime. So the key question you want to be asking your customers who have bare metal is, what type of applications do they have running? If it's just a testing environment or if it's a development environment, that's one thing. But because as we've grown as a company, we now sell servers that are ready for hyper-converged infrastructure so you can run those critical applications, then you need to think much more seriously about, it's a standalone, it runs there, and where am I going to keep my data, and what am I going to back it up on, and how am I going to get it back into up and running if it's on a dedicated server. This is a very different one because customers are responsible for the data security and the setup of their own dedicated servers. So this is a different discussion that you're going to have with them versus the public cloud and the hosted private cloud, where OVH is managing that infrastructure more actively.